Well, hey, what's up, guys? Unrested here, back with another JFAQ. Today is purely a JFAQ, and it's just going to dive right into number one, the topic of the future of Japan, and some things that I'm a little bit worried about. This is my first video in a long time shooting from my school, so for those of you wondering what it still looks like, not much has changed. It's still very clean and precise and sterile the way I like to keep it. Yes, I do have students who still do e-lessons, and I have a couple that come in one at a time, and that's about all we're doing these days with coronavirus going on. Worries for the future of Japan. Number one, old versus young. Well, we've got a big problem with old versus young in Japan. If you don't know, the old people in Japan far outnumber the young, and where that is a huge problem is the fact that there's no pension for them. It's getting harder and harder for Japan to pay their pensions due to the fact that people retire at about 62 here. That's the average retirement age. They're trying to up it to 75 now, which is pretty late in life. Yeah, Japan does have the longest life expectancy in the world, up there with, I think, Italy, although that might all change after coronavirus. Italy, and I think, isn't there like some tiny little island country that has one of the highest lifespans in the world? I don't know off the top of my head. Maybe it's Malta. Anyway, that being said, yeah, we have a big problem with the old far outweighing the young, to the point that almost every year in Japan, adult diapers far outsell baby diapers, just to give you an idea of the difference. The population is dropping lower and lower because old people do not have babies and young people do not have babies because the government doesn't do anything to prop up those young people who are struggling young people in Japan. Yet the old yell at the young to make more babies, keep Japan alive, continue the population, and then do things like, oh, I don't know, remove a park from the middle of their neighborhood because they want to take a nap at 4:30 p.m. and the kids are too loud outside playing. Yeah, so if you do stuff like that, usually people don't tend to move into familyhood neighbors, and then they also don't have families, and then there's no new people in Japan. So the stubbornness of, really both sides. I mean, there's some stuff young people do too, where I can kind of understand the frustration of the elderly. I'm not saying either side is perfectly right or perfectly wrong, but I am saying there is a little give and take with this situation that needs to happen for anything to proceed further. Moving on from there, now this is something that's kind of been addressed recently, and I think something that needs to happen more. One thing I really like about America that Japan does not do, and this is almost every country does this except for Japan and maybe other Asian countries like China, they don't have comedy about their politicians. They don't make fun of their politicians. In America, we lambast and do all sorts of things to mock our politicians, and politicians know that's going to happen. Maybe once in a while they get a little bit pissed off or mad, but they know that's part of the deal with being a politician. You're a public figure, you're putting yourself out there, and you're going to get mocked, especially when you do or say something very silly. It goes on for a while where people make skits about it, etc., etc. In Japan, that never happens, and I really feel like even though that is comedy, even though that is something that's just supposed to be a joke, it does let people reflect. I myself feel like when I've had haters on YouTube or people who make fun of me on YouTube, later that did make me take a look back and be like, you know what, that was really silly that I acted that way during that time. Maybe I should self-correct and become a better person at how I handled that situation in the future. I feel like comedy can do that. It can do it in a way that's not so aggressive, rather than send in an assassin to kill a politician. Let's just make a funny joke, and maybe, just maybe, that politician will be self-aware enough to see that comedy act on TV and be like, you know what? This person's right. I was really silly. Now, recently, there was a comedian, and I really wish I knew this comedian's name. He is a comedian whose shtick is usually he wears sunglasses, he slicks his hair back, and he wears like the old style, I think you call it like a momohiki. It's like old style Japanese underwear. I'm not sure exactly what you call it. Almost looks like the sumo type diaper looking thing. I should probably know the name for this, but I'm not good on older Japanese words. And he was making fun of the prime minister, and what he did, his shtick, his whole thing was really quite funny. A famous J-pop idol was trying to entertain people by playing live on a streaming service to keep people kind of entertained while they're stuck inside during COVID. And this person, this J-pop idol, was just doing it out of the kindness of his heart. He wasn't making people pay for it or anything. And what he would do is he would invite very select famous talent to come on and just relax with him, or either like play a song along with him or sing along with him or just make funny jokes with him. And it was really entertaining. A lot of people were loving this. They're like, this is pretty good. I mean, the guy's great at playing guitar and singing, and the other people bring a lot to the comedy aspect and things like that. Well, he invited Shinzo Abe on, who's the prime minister of Japan, if you don't already know that. And Shinzo Abe used the time, like each person gets like an hour or something like that with him. He used his time to just sit there and like literally he's like this the whole time. Check his cell phone, change the TV channel. His dog jumps up on his lap and he like kisses his dog on the head, and doesn't ever pay attention to anything. It's just like he wasn't even there. He just like ignored the singer the whole time. He didn't talk to him. He didn't start a dialogue. I'm not expecting Shinzo Abe to break out, his ukulele and blast me with an awesome YouTube video, or, slam me with some of the best jokes around, but casual conversation, that would kind of be nice. How about talking about, how he hopes everybody's okay, and, PSA or whatever you need to do, do politician things. No one's going to mock you for that. But when you sit there and act like you don't care and you be a complete apathetic bastard to the entire country that's in trouble right now, while you send out your two measly Abino masks and your wife fucks the whole world, like, sorry for my bad language, I'm trying to cut down on it, but sometime take a look up at what Shinzo Abe, what his wife has done in Japan. She is like, I don't know if she's evil or dumb or evil and dumb. She's the King Joffrey of Japan. So anyway, he wasted the whole time. So the next comedian who came on, this comedian with the sunglasses and the diaper gig, he just went on there and pretended to act like Shinzo Abe to mock him, and people were like laughing so hard. Like, it was such a good comedy shtick, because all he did was just show how apathetic Shinzo Abe was, and it was hilarious. It was great. I mean, he did a great job, and I think this needs to happen more for the future of Japan, for politicians to finally take notice. Hey, you're the one screwing up Japan. Your greedy ways, your self-satisfying ways that makes you always come first before the people of Japan is what's screwing it up. And now, I'm not just saying this is Japanese politicians. This is politicians around the world. There is no such thing as a good politician right now in our world. And if there is, you show them to me, and maybe that'll give some of these other politicians a, modus operandi to follow. Moving on from there, I worry about one of the biggest things I see happening is a decline in Japanese media. When's the last time, as you guys out there who are horror fans, you heard about a great Japanese horror movie? When's the last time? Since early 2000. Have you heard any in the last 10 or 20 years that you can think of? Probably not. There's been a couple so-so animes that have come out, Children of the Storm, what else? You've got the Star Beast that just came on Netflix. The what's the other one? I want to say Devil Cry or Devil May Cry, but Devil May Cry is a video game. I watched the whole series where the guy can turn into a devil or a demon. I forgot the name of it, but there's been some good anime movies, and that's about it. Other than that, have you seen anything else great come out of Japan recently? There's been a few anime series that are so-so, but they're usually on the down low, or they're indie projects. The stuff that is repetitive in Japan that comes on the TV every day, it's literally just the same thing with slightly changed characters every time. Take a look at some of the stuff kids watch here in Japan for a daily show. Number one, they've been running the same cartoons for 40 plus, 60 plus years, which, sometimes that makes sense when it's things like Looney Tunes and you want to have a classic revival for a bit. but it's not like Space Jam or something like that. This is like literally just drawing the same characters the same way, to the point that like even the voice actors have died. Doraemon's voice actor has died, and they've had to find new voice actors, and they're still doing Doraemon. It's time to move on. Like, it's time to make some new ideas. The classics are great. Bring them out again every once in a while, you know, have a little reboot or a soft reboot every once in a while. But it's time to stop with the mainstay of it. The tokusatsu, the transforming the henshin warriors who transform, like you got your Power Rangers or your Kamen Rider and stuff like that. Their stories aren't changing. It's just a slightly changed costume, the same story and the same monsters again and again and again. I know this because I have kids and they turn these TV shows on and I listen to them in the background, and I can tell you the plot is not hard to understand. It's the most simplistic Japanese ever. And every time it's really stupid crap. Like, the quality of Japanese shows at this point is literally just carbon copy, carbon copy, carbon copy, toy, carbon copy, you get the idea, right? And then they just sell toys. Oh, hey, here's all these new toys and new cartoons, new toys, new cartoons. Slightly change this one. Now they're not train warriors. Now they're samurai warriors. Now they're not samurai warriors. They're paint warriors. Now they're not paint warriors. They're vehicle warriors. It's just so dumb. Like, get something new. Make something greater than what you're doing right now, because right now everything is so stale. When NHK comes around to my house and asks to collect money, I don't give it. NHK doesn't put out anything I want to pay for. NHK doesn't provide any kind of quality TV. You know, if you want to come around and ask me for 3,000 yen every month or get me on some kind of payment list, offer me something that I'm paying for, right? Where's all this money going? And movies too, just movies. They have not been good recently. Like, when's the last time you saw Japan put out a good action movie? Like Kurosawa type movies. When's the last time you heard about something that great? All right, in the last, 10 years, I can think of, Departures or Confessions are the last two good movies I heard about coming out of Japan. Maybe One Cut of the Dead, but again, that was an indie project. The only people ever doing anything good in Japan. Stuck in old broken systems. Yeah, so Japan's got a huge problem with moving on with technology. There's a lot of broken systems in Japan that just are not working. They have things like literally ward offices, that's like your town hall or your record keeping center within your town, that are still completely paper based or done on computers so old that no one knows how to use the systems unless they've been doing them for like 40 plus years. There's literally been times where entire people's town records have been lost because a fire started, and guess what? If a computer burns, you can usually save the hard drive, but when paper burns, it's gone. And there was actually records in some ward offices that were completely paper. They had never been updated to hard drives. So what are you doing, okay? On top of that, we've got a very antiquated English system within the schools, which, the books are just the same books that are put out over and over again with a new facelift to the cover of the book. Messed up Oxford English that Japan has tried to create themselves, which completely defies the rules of what Oxford English is. They get their own little education councils together to put these books together, and I guess no one in the group actually has proper English grammar, because you find mistake after mistake if you ever go there to be an English teacher. On top of it, they make their teachers that they send out to these schools that help the English teacher. They don't give them supplies, they don't give them good pay, they don't give them any sort of benefits, health benefits, long-term benefits. They give them no inspiration to really try their best. So a lot of these jobs are just transient jobs that people hop one to the next, and you can't blame them for doing that because there's no benefit to working long-term at one school and really seeing the education provided to these kids progress and evolve to the next level. And Japan has done little to nothing to do this, and we've got the Olympics coming. Yes, the Olympics are still coming. I saw someone in an old comment said, I heard the Olympics were canceled. Scott, why are you still saying they're coming? You're right, they are canceled for this year. Like, they're not coming in 2020. From what I hear, it's going to be next year at this same time. If it actually happens, I don't know. I'm not going to make any promises, but that's what I've been told so far. I have tickets to the Olympics, so This is why I'm keeping up with it. And yes, I'll make a video when I go. Let's see. So, final. I'm going to wrap it up. Politicians who want people to have more kids but offer no help, no care, no monetary reward, or better job benefits to career women. This is a country that runs how like America did back in the 1930s or 1950s, where women were asked to just stay at home even if they had worked their whole life to get an amazing career such as a doctor or a dentist or a lawyer. They are expected, once they get pregnant, you are now a housewife, stay at home. The husband will do all the work until he eventually dies from all that work. And you will raise the kids who will never know their father and grow up and never learn anything but the world through your eyes. You know, I've had my theories on this before, and I could get really deep into why I think there is so many what they call the grass-fed male in Japan, but that's for another time, another video, and another topic. The biggest problem I see is Japan is doing nothing to advance the careers of women in the workplace and even men in the workplace and the youth as well. The politicians are doing nothing to offer any benefits to these kids who are busting their hump to still take all these different entrance exams, different class levels. There's even been recently, and this is like the biggest scandal that blew up in Japan, there were a group of men and women who would go to doctor colleges, and medical schools, dentist schools, and they had to take these brutal tests. Now, these tests are so brutal, let me tell you. My wife still wakes up from nightmares she has about them, and she finished those tests like ages ago. And she said they were so hard that she like lost tons of weight, was smoking all the time. Like, she looked bad. She showed me pictures back then, and she looked like she was like, a skeleton because of how much she was studying and stressed out about these tests. And it was these tests that were being administered to both men and women who came to these different medical colleges, and they would notice that a higher percentage of men would pass and many, many women would fail, even though it seemed as though both had studied equally as hard and were as equally educated, because the teachers who had progressed them through their classes to get up to the point that they would take the final exam were like, that's really weird, because that person seemed super smart, like they could pass anything, and that guy seemed like crazy dumb. So like they would see that there were some women who were like incredibly smart and some guys who were just kind of average. And they're like, why? This is so weird, because I saw more women in my class this year. Well, it turns out that they had been completely switching up the grades to make more men get the jobs so that women would not take the jobs and would stay home and would be housewives. They were literally failing them out of tests that they had worked to pass, spent tons of money on the college, and spent tons of time and money studying to pass, and they had passed. And then they were failed, and their grades were switched with another man's grade who had failed, and then they would have to switch places. The man would get the job, he would pass, he would get to take on the medical career, and the woman who was smarter, had done better, would not. Now, I'm not any sort of feminist, I'm not any sort of, women's rights. I am an equalitarian, I want equal rights for both, and this is a huge violation of that. This is not equal rights. This is complete and utter betrayal of anyone who paid these colleges and followed the government system. It's a complete slap in the face that nothing that they've ever been doing has ever worked, because they've been screwed from the beginning. It's unbelievable. And this is just one small look into the way the world of Japan works for the career woman. There are no benefits to a woman for going home and having a baby and then coming back. They can actually be fired while they're at home. They can be fired even if they have to suddenly go for some sort of emergency pregnancy hospital visit. There's nothing protecting them for that. There's no HIPAA laws that say that they don't have to go tell their employer what exactly happened. I've had women who've had to tell when they've had either a miscarriage or some sort of horrible medical thing. They've had to tell their boss word for word what happened, sitting there crying because they don't have the HIPAA laws that say, look, if you had a medical problem, bring in your doctor's note, show it to them, and it'll pass. And the guy doesn't need to be asking all these questions. Some of these men, they don't know anything about that. They've been at work their whole life. I'm not saying they're inconsiderate, mean, or don't take in the feelings of the women, but they don't even know that they're asking something they shouldn't ask. That's why those kind of laws exist, because sometimes you don't know how much you're supposed to pry. Should I be worried about this person at work and make sure their safety and health is okay? Oh wait, that's a situation that the hospital is completely taken care of and I don't need to poke my nose into? Okay, thank you HIPAA law for covering that. Anyway, these are my biggest concerns for the future of Japan. Whether or not they will be fixed in the upcoming 20 to 50 years, I do not know. To be honest, I see Japan as a very calm, collected, and relaxed country that knows how to keep their head together and keep concentrated on focusing and keep the chaos to a minimum. But where I see a huge problem with Japan, it is also a very stubborn country, all right? We're talking about a country that during World War II, when they had no more metal left, they started to tell families to melt down their pots and their pans to fight to the very, very end. And sometimes that stubbornness is very useful, and sometimes that stubbornness can be a complete hindrance to the future evolution of a country that can hold so much tradition and so much futuristic technology in the same place at the same time. And there is a way that this can be manifested to benefit everyone in this country. Whether or not that'll come to fruition, I guess only time will tell. Until next time, I am Unrested, and I will talk to you again real soon.